level as investors analyze risks in the broader market. Jamie Dimon weighs in on use cases around stablecoins. And Santiago Roel Santos of Inversion discusses what he expects from crypto in the fourth quarter. Welcome to CNBC's Crypto World. I'm Brandon Gomez. Crypto markets mostly holding steady this morning. As of noon Eastern, Bitcoin was little changed, hovering just under $113,000. Ether rose 0.3% to 41.83. Meanwhile, the Trump family-backed World Liberty Financial token fell more than 5% after co-founder Zach Folkman reportedly said during a speech at Korea Blockchain Week in Seoul that the DeFi platform plans to launch its own debit card. Okay, let's talk about the top stories. Publicly traded design company turned Solana treasury, Forward Industries, plans to tokenize shares of its stock. Yesterday, it announced its partnership with fintech firm Superstate, allowing investors to tokenize its share on the Solana blockchain. The announcement also mentions Forward's plan to take equity in Superstate as part of the agreement. This follows the company securing more than a $1.5 billion commitment earlier this month for a Solana treasury. As of noon, shares of the company jumped by around 12%. Next, JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon sat down with CNBC TV 18 at the JP Morgan India Conference 2025. And among the things he discussed was crypto. When speaking on stablecoins, Dimon said he's not particularly worried about them competing with banks and sees some use cases for the technology. He also said banks are exploring whether they should have a consortium as they look to get involved. This comes as TradFi firms look to get more involved with blockchain technology after the passage of the Genius Act this summer. During an earnings call earlier this year, Dimon, who's been a skeptic of crypto, acknowledged JP Morgan would be involved in the stablecoin space. All right, let's turn to crypto markets for our main story. I spoke with Santiago Roel Santos, founder and CEO of the crypto firm Inversion, about where prices are headed as we approach the final quarter of 2025. So let's start with the broader markets. Major cryptocurrencies have settled a bit this morning after a sharp pullback yesterday. What do you make of that drawdown? Is it a reaction to politics and a looming government shutdown? Is this still part of sort of the historical summer doldrums that we see in the season? What's your take?
Yeah, look, I mean, we just had a rate cut, and I think Bitcoin has had a phenomenal year, and I think the market is cooling down a little bit. I think if you look at futures, I think traders are bracing for continued volatility throughout the end of the year, and I think this is just normal. I wouldn't read too much into it. This is a volatile asset class.
I mean, and to that point, I mean, I'm thinking about sort of what are the biggest drivers of prices right now, overall, especially, right? So for a while, I mean, we've been talking about regulation. That was very much a driving factor. Do you think that that's still at play here? Or do you think sort of the macroeconomic headwinds and tailwinds are what are driving prices as we sort of look forward?
I think it's very much the latter. I think Bitcoin has entered into and is much more mature of an asset now. It is a global macro asset. You see more companies put it on the balance sheet, pension funds, RIAs. It's become easier for people to have exposure to Bitcoin. And I think it's a direct correlation to rates and the overall macro picture. And I think as Bitcoin has matured, we can expect it to continue to be sensitive to macro shocks and the broader economy. I think it's very normal, very much the latter.
But then you still obviously have investors wanting to monitor and see where things go by way of regulation, right? We obviously have a much more friendly administration in the White House towards the crypto market now. Are there still some regulatory headwinds? Are there still some tailwinds that investors should be focusing on, that you're personally focusing on when it comes to figuring out where prices might go from here?
Absolutely. Look, the reality is we had a total 180 on the regulatory environment last November, and we have finally an administration that wants to regulate it. You have the Genius Act, you have David Sachs at the helm. So there's a broader, very concerted effort across agencies to continue to regulate this industry. And so I think as we look ahead, there's going to be tokenization of stocks and stablecoin regulation. And I think that bodes extremely well for the industry. If you were to look back over the last 9 months, there's sort of this unlock of friction and release of this anxiety in the market. And finally, you're seeing a lot of large institutions and companies want to get exposure because they've been doing their homework for the last couple of years. And finally, they can have exposure to the asset class, and that's very positive, and that will continue to be a major tailwind for the industry.
I totally agree. I think that there was a change in corporate sentiment over the last 6, 9 months, 12 months when it comes to crypto and Bitcoin specifically, right? If it was about 2 years ago, saying that, you want to invest in crypto and the corporate side of things, just 12 months ago would have been, probably not great for your job, right? But nowadays, right, everybody and their mama, including banks, right? JP Morgan talked about how, the company is going to get into the crypto stablecoin space, as well as you've seen Vanguard, BlackRock thing, big companies, hedge funds, and equity investors, all getting into buying Bitcoin. So, you know, the time that we were in the past where crypto and Bitcoin specifically was, labeled as very volatile, and it's still volatile, but it wasn't a, popular space. Nowadays, it's definitely changing. So if you are someone that's currently looking to, add to your portfolio, I would recommend you adding crypto and specifically Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then you can stretch a little bit, but I would say Bitcoin is definitely the number one player in the crypto space for sure. And you have Ethereum, and you have other places like Solana and XRP, and you can go down a list, Cardano, and then a lot of other Tether and different investments that you can make. But specifically Bitcoin, definitely invest in Bitcoin. I would say take 5 to 10% of your portfolio and put that into crypto, specifically into Bitcoin, and allow that to then, grow. Again, it's always long-term thought process. It's a 5, 10, 20-year investment vehicle. If you have children, I mean, investing in Bitcoin right now for your kids would be significantly important for them and their long-term investment future also.